Hello, I'm Billy Stewart, Assistant Pastor here at Solid Rock Tabernacle, 1325 Rudy Road in Alma, Arkansas. Thank you for joining us for the rest. I'd like to extend this personal invitation for you to come join us in one of our spirit-filled services. Our Sunday school begins at 9 a.m., our Sunday morning worship is at 10 a.m., and our Sunday evening worship is at 6 p.m. We also have an exciting Wednesday evening Bible study that begins at 7 p.m. Come join us, won't you? 1325 Rudy Road in Alma, Arkansas. Hey, we'll save a seat for you. And now, let's join our service already in progress.
We're in book or chapter number 22 of Exodus. So let's look at verses 1 to 4. It said, if a man shall steal an ox or a sheep and kill it or sell it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. If a thief be found breaking up and be smitten that he die, there shall no blood be shed for him. If the sun be risen upon him, there shall be blood shed for him, for he should make full restitution. If he have nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. If the theft be for certainly found in his hand alive, whether it be an ox or an ass or a sheep, he shall restore double. Okay? So this is getting into the laws about theft right now. And we already know, it's already stated in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not steal. Okay? But here it is giving more specific principles to the judges. So the judges will know what to do. It's just like our laws. Our laws you have, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. Well, then they have for the judges and all the attorneys and all those people, they have the penalties set down. Of what, if you do this, this is what it's going to cost you. And that's what this was. This was setting down the penalties for that. Okay? And it has those principles of the penalties so they could apply that principle of stealing and the penalty that goes with it. In the daily life and administration of justice among the Israel people, they needed to have these guidelines on how they were going to do it. Okay? Now, there was a heavier fine for slaughtering or selling the livestock. So if you actually killed it, slaughtered it, or you sold it, there was a heavier fine than if you just stole it and kept it for yourself. All right? It presumably shows deliberate intent to steal. In other words, if you steal it and then you sell it, then you can be pretty much well sure that you meant to steal that, so you could do it. If you steal it and slaughter it to eat, then they can pretty much well know, okay, you stole it on purpose. It wasn't an accident. Okay? Now, the Mosaic law did not send a person to jail because of theft. As a matter of fact, in most of the Mosaic law, you don't see anything being sent to jail, really. But they didn't get sent to jail because of theft. Instead, the thief was required to restore what he sold, plus an additional penalty. And in this passage, the penalty could be anywhere from 200% to 500%. Okay? Yeah, of what it was worth. Now, this can be regarded as a positive approach to the punishment of criminals, if you think about it, putting them to productive restitution and compensating the victims of the theft. Okay? So when you think about it, these principles are ignored in today's society and today's judicial system. You know, what if we didn't send somebody who steals something to jail? They steal something, you say, okay, you stole that. Now you've got to restore that you stole plus 5 times as much or 500% as much. You know? It's going to make you think, because now they steal something, sell it, they get to keep the money for the most part. They might get a fine or something like that. But here, yeah, slap on the wrist. Here, the person, if you steal it, okay, you're going to restore that, and you're going to restore 500%, 200 to 500% of what you stole. Well, that's going to make you think twice about going out and stealing something. Okay? Penny Annie's, yeah, yeah. Now, these principles, not only are they ignored in today's administration of justice, they're also, as a principle, ignored a lot of time in Christians' lives. We try to make amends for injury done to another by an extraordinary amount of civility. We'll be real nice to them and everything. Well, we done somebody wrong, and we'll be sweet to them. We'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry," go on like that. But we're reluctant to frankly confess that we've done something wrong. Okay? So that makes a big difference, and we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to say, "Hey, I was wrong, what I did, and I'm sorry for it." Okay? Now, if a person was unable to pay back what they stole, here's the interesting thing about it. They didn't have the money. They said, "Well, I ain't got the money. That's why I stole the thing in the first place, because they didn't have the money. So I can't pay you back." Today, they just go, "Okay, well, we'll just let it go." But that's not the way that it was in the Mosaic Law. Oh, Brother Lester? If the person that was stealing something could not afford to pay it back, then they were sold into indentured servitude. In other words, they were sold to somebody that they had to work that off. Remember last time we talked about they had to work for 6 years, okay, unless they were redeemed. Okay? And when they were sold to somebody, the money that they got was given to the victim, the one who was stolen from. Okay? And in this verse, we also see a property owner had the right to protect his property with force, if need be, but only with reasonable force. The assumption that if it was done in daylight, the property owner had the ability to defend himself short of lethal force. At night, that's a different story. Okay? But in the daylight, they had the right to defend themselves short of lethal force, unless somebody was trying to kill them, of course. Okay? That is the original stand your ground doctrine. There. I like it in Florida, and saw that one sheriff. I don't remember where. I think it's Broward County sheriff down there was talking about some people, and they were all upset because these people tried to break into a house and they got shot. And the sheriff said, "Hey, in Florida, you try to break in the house, you're going to get shot. And we encourage it. We encourage the people to shoot you if you come in. If you try to break into somebody's house, you deserve to get shot." Yeah. Yeah. I saw a friend of mine had a sign on outside of his house that yeah, I loved it. It says, "No trespassing. We're running out of places to hide the bodies." So I said, "That's a good one. I like that." Yeah. All right, verses 5 to 8. "If a man shall cause a field or a vineyard to be eaten, and shall put in his beast, and shall feed in another man's field, of the beast of his own field, and of the best of his own vineyard, shall he make restitution. if fire break out and catch in thorns, so that the stacks of corn or the standing corn or the field be consumed therewith, he that kindled the fire shall surely make restitution. If a man shall deliver unto his neighbor money or stuff to keep, and it be stolen out of the man's house, if the thief be found, let him pay double. If the thief not be found, then the master of the house shall be brought unto the judges to see whether he have put his hand upon his neighbor's goods. All right, what does all that mean? Well, first of all, the owner of an animal was responsible for the grazing of his animals. All right? He was obligated to respect his neighbor's property, his neighbor's grazing land. And if the animal got over and started grazing in their land, or something like that, and destroyed some of it, then he had to make restitution of the best of his land and the best of his vineyard. Now, we don't see it as much now, but back when I was growing up, everybody around us had cows. You know, everybody had cows, had livestock and everything. And it was nothing to go out and say, hey, your cow's over in our property. And they'll go, okay, well, we'll go get them, you know. So everybody saddle up horses and we'd go drive these cows back into that property. And they'd do the same thing for us. Hey, your cows are on our land. And nobody worried too much about it. But this is if it was destroyed, if something was destroyed because of it. This was a fair punishment. And it was significant enough to give the farmer a reason not to allow his animals to carelessly and destructively graze. This is applying to a farmer who just doesn't worry about keeping fences up, doesn't worry about doing anything else. He's not keeping control of his animals at all, and just letting them wander all over the place. Okay? Restitution was also required in cases of vandalism or foolish neglect. Okay? Even if one kept the property of another. The Mosaic law, a legal system, had a high view of personal responsibility, okay? Even with the property of others. This translates into a proper concern for the property of others. A Christian, as Christians, if we back into somebody else's car, then we're going to leave a note for that person. We should leave a note for that person, okay? And a Christian will have proper insurance, guaranteeing that they will be compensated, that you'll compensate the person who you ran into. And, you know, I'd hate to walk out and find a dent in my new truck, you know, because it's somebody didn't do it, and no note or anything. Somebody just did it. But people do that. They just make dents in parking lots and back into people in parking lots, and then they just drive off. Okay? Not necessarily. If it's on private property, and like Walmart parking lot, it's private property. Okay? Yeah. In Fort Smith, as a matter of fact, in Fort Smith, if you get into a car wreck in Fort Smith, they'll say, are the cars drivable? Well, yeah. Then come by and fill out a police report later. They won't even send somebody out there for that. Yeah, it's. Yeah. I was backing out. And that, you know, now that I got a big backup screen now, a backup camera and screen and everything. They will confuse you if you're not used to them. But I was backing out, and I saw another lady backing out just down from me, and I'm like, is she going to stop? And she started, and I finally had to put it back in drive and jump up front and wait for them to back out and leave, because she was not paying attention in the least to where she was going. I said she was going to run right into me, and no. Okay? Now, if somebody gives you, huh? Oh, yeah, yeah. Yep. Yep. Now, here is another part of this. If someone gives you something to hold for them, money, property, whatever it is, they give you something to hold for them, then you are then responsible for that thing that they have given you to hold for them as a faithful steward or a manager. Okay? So if somebody gives you $100, you can't go out and spend that $100 and say, "Oh, gee, I lost it. I'm sorry." No, you got to be faithful stewards of that $100 because they just gave it to you for you to hold. Right? The principle also includes what God gives us to manage or steward for Him. God gives us things that we're supposed to manage, that we're supposed to be stewards over. And when He does that, we need to be good stewards to Him. Restitution was paid according to a predetermined amount or percentage. So it was not left to the whim of the victim, okay, or to the whim of the judge as far as that goes. You couldn't. There was none of this frivolous lawsuits. I asked him to keep my car in his garage, and he agreed to keep my car in his garage, and then he burned down his garage with my car in it. Well, I want $100,000 for my car. It was a '78 Pinto. Yes, it was an antique. No, that doesn't count. Nobody wants a '78 Pinto. I'm sorry. All right, verses 9 to 13. For all manner of trespass, whether it be for ox, for ass, for sheep, for raiment, or for any manner of lost thing which another challengeth to be his, the cause of both parties shall come before the judges, and whom the judges say shall condemn, he shall pay double unto his neighbor. If a man deliver unto his neighbor an ass, an ox, or a sheep, or any beast to keep, and it die, or be hurt, or driven away, no man seeing it, then shall an oath of the Lord be between both them and he that had not put his hand unto his neighbor's good. And the owner of it shall accept thereof, and he shall not make it good. And if it be stolen from him, he shall make restitution unto the owner thereof. If it be torn in pieces, let him bring it for witness, and he shall not make good that which was torn. Hey, let me explain this. This is getting into a lot of Mosaic legalese here. In the law of Israel, an owner did not lose ownership simply because the object was lost. In other words, if you lose your cell phone in Walmart, that doesn't mean that you lost ownership of your cell phone. That's still your cell phone. Okay? So you don't lose it and lose ownership of it just because you lose it. If another person finds the object and the owner lays claim to that object, it was decided by judges as to who actually it belongs to. The judges heard the evidence, they investigated it, and then they decided who was right and who was wrong. Okay? And the guilty party had to pay double restitution. Right? Now, does that make sense? You lose your phone at Walmart. Then you see somebody walking around and you've got a unique ringtone or something, and you hear your unique ringtone, and you go, "Hey, that's my phone." And then you get into a big fight about it, and then you go to court, and the judge decides whose phone it is. All right? And if it found that the person that took the phone, the guilty party that took the phone and didn't return it, was found guilty of that, then he had to pay back double. Okay? Whether they were the accused or the defendant, they had to pay back double. In other words, if you accuse somebody and it was found that you were wrong, you had to pay that person double. Okay? There was a price for false accusations or lawsuit. That's the problem in today's society. There's too much frivolous suit because there's no price for them. They're starting to get more into that now. They're starting to have it called frivolous tort, which if you keep filing lawsuits against somebody, then they're going to say, no, that's ridiculous. You need to quit doing that. Okay? And look what it says. If a man deliver unto his neighbor an ass or an ox or a sheep or any beast to keep, and it die or be hurt or driven away, no man seeing it. Okay? This law considered the situation when something suspicious happens. An animal in the care of another person dies, is hurt, or is driven away. Yet it happened when nobody saw it. Okay? In a case like this, the owner of the animal was obligated to accept the sworn testimony of the accused. Okay? If the animal dies and you accuse this person of you killed my ox, and they said no, I didn't, and they go before the judges, and the judges says you swear an oath before God that it accidentally died or it died of sickness or whatever, okay? And that person swears that oath before God, then you had to take his word for it. Okay? Unless there was evidence that gave reasonable doubt to the truthfulness of the accused, of course. Yeah. This principle is the foundation of our idea that a man is innocent until proven guilty. In this case, the man's oath was taken as true. When a man made that oath before God, it was taken as true, unless proof to the contrary could be found. Okay? Remember it said that if it was torn into pieces or it was partly devoured, he says, let him bring it as witness. Bring it for witness. Okay? What this is saying, the production of the carcass would basically show that while the shepherd could not have prevented the kill, he was alert enough to stop the devouring of whatever was killed. Okay? So if he's out there and he's got sheep or ox or whatever it is, and something comes up to kill it, a wolf, whatever, and yet he fights the wolf off and keeps the carcass, when he brings the carcass back, then they say, okay, well, he couldn't keep it from being killed, but he was alert enough to keep it from being totally consumed. Okay? In this case, though the owner suffered loss, he was not allowed to compensate the loss. In other words, the shepherd wasn't found guilty and had to pay for it. Okay? By accusing and winning damages against an innocent party. And it was considered that he was innocent if he did that. Okay? And the owner, the person that was bringing the charges, he had to accept the outcome. Okay? Even though the justice left him uncompensated. See, that's the good thing about this. There was no appeal system. What the judges said, that was it. If the judges decided that, you couldn't say, well, I'm going to take it, I'm going to take it to the Supreme Court. They were the Supreme Court. They were it. Okay? Judge, jury, executioner, they were it. There was no appeal from their courts. Verses 14 and 15. If a man borrow aught of his neighbor, and it be hurt or die, the owner thereof bring not with it, he shall surely make it good. But if the owner thereof be with, he shall not make it good. And if it be an hired thing, it came for his time. Okay, this is the principle of responsibility and restitution. And it also applies to borrowing and lending. The assumption was that if the owner was with the animal or the tool or whatever it was, and it was used by another person, the owner was responsible for the use and care of the object while it was in his presence. Okay? If you loaned a man an ox to help you plow your field, but you stood there and watched what he was doing in that field, then and that ox drops dead, then you can't do anything about it. Because you were there and you could have said, hey, you're working that ox too hard. You know, give it a break. Right? Now, if the owner was not present, then the borrower was responsible for it. Okay? He shall surely make it good. This was the simple principle meant to guide the judges. The guilty party had to make it good. Distinctions were to be made according to fairness and to justice, not just simply reward whoever suffered a loss. Okay? Sometimes loss is suffered, and we see this even with ourselves. We suffer a loss, and really, no one's to blame. And if no one's to blame, no one gets charged. Right? Let's look at verses 16 and 17. If a man entice a maid that is not betrothed and lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife. If her father utterly refuse to give her unto him, he shall pay money according to the dowry of virgins. Okay? Now, some claim this passage did not prohibit premarital sex, but it did prohibit, or at least strongly discourage it in practice, because it required a man to either marry or to provide for any woman that he had premarital sex with. This law emphasized that there was no such thing as casual sex. And that's the problem with the world today. It's just casual sex. Okay? How many people would be going out having just casual sex if they had to take care of the woman that they had sex with? Yeah. Yeah, they still don't do anything at it. Yeah. But both the Old and the New Testaments state that sexual relations carry lasting consequences. This law encouraged both men and women to value the virginity of a woman. It's not that virginity of men was worthless or was ignored, yet the law encouraged greater care and preservation for the virginity of the women. Okay? Until marriage and the advantageous circumstances of child raising. Because that's what the women were meant to do, was to have children and raise them. Okay? And it was a great detriment of society and culture, and it is a great detriment of society and culture when government works against the value of virginity. Okay? And intentionally or not, support behavior that doesn't value it. Reminded of a story of a man that went into there was a lady that owned a antique shop. And she had a table there at the antique shop. Originally, she had $600 on it. But it had been sitting there for a little while. So she said, okay, I'm going to mark it down to $300. So she put it on sale for $300. And this gentleman came in to buy the table. And he looked at it, saw that it was marked down from $600 to $300, and he offered her $200 for it. Okay? Trying to bargain here. Okay? And the lady says, "No, I'm not going to do that." And he kept trying. And as they were going back and forth, she started to realize the true worth of this table is actually $600, not the $300 I'm asking for it. So he kept saying, "I'll give you $200." And she goes, "No, I changed my mind. It's worth $600. That's how much you're going to pay for it. If you want the table, you're going to pay $600 for it." Finally, the man bought the table for $600. And when he took it home, he treated it like a $600 table rather than a $200 table. Okay? The higher the value of something, the better that you treat it. And that's what they're talking about. It supports when we have things today that intentionally or not, the government goes against virginity and sexual morality, it supports behavior that doesn't value those things. Okay? Yeah. 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 Then they have some of them that single mothers, and she's only 15 or 16 years old, and they're both pregnant at the same time. There was one show, "Me and my mother are pregnant," and I'm like, yeah. Okay. So this supports behavior that doesn't value it, or it promotes the cheapening of virginity and abstinence until marriage. Okay? If the man who took advantage of the woman was considered a completely unacceptable husband by the father of the wronged woman, he said, "No, you're not going to be my son-in-law. No." Okay? Then the man had to pay the dowry without receiving the bride. You see, back then, when you got a bride, you had to pay a dowry. Now, he had to pay the dowry, but he didn't get the bride. Okay? Because the dad said, "No. But you've already had sex with her, so you got to pay the dowry, and you don't get the bride." This was strong incentive against taking advantage of a young woman. Okay? This brief presentation of the law gave no penalty to the woman involved. None whatsoever. This was because she was thought to be disadvantaged and needed to be compensated. If she was not taken advantage of, then the loss of her virginity and the diminishment of her marriage prospects was thought to be punishment enough. Okay? Because back then, you didn't marry somebody that wasn't a virgin. All right? Okay, verses 18 to 20. We might get done a little bit early tonight, I don't know. "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." These are some offenses that are capital offenses. In other words, these are death penalty cases. "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Whosoever lieth with a beast shall be surely put to death. He that sacrificeth unto any god, save unto the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed." Okay? Now, among the ancient people, the practice of sorcery had two associations to it. First was the contact with dark or demonic powers or demonic persons. Second was altered states through drugs or potions. Okay? In fact, in Revelation, when it talks about sorceries and sorcerers, the Greek word there used is pharmakeia, which is where we get pharmacy and pharmacists. Pharmacists are drug dealers. Granted, they're legal drugs, but they're drug dealers. Okay? So there was understood to be a connection between drug taking and occult practices. Okay? And the law shows that such communication is possible. The penalty shows that it's dangerous. Okay? It says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." This was considered a severe enough threat that sorcery was considered a capital crime. The combination of occult practices and drug-induced altered state was seen as destructive to the culture and moral fabric of Israel. And it's the same thing today. Okay? It's getting more and more and more that people are getting more and more involved in drugs. And it's gotten to the, when we're at the point, and I'm surprised that it ever happened in Arkansas, but when it gets to the point where people are going to to doctors and the doctors are prescribing marijuana, he goes, "Oh, it helps with this, it helps with that." Yeah, but you don't know what any of the long-term side effects are of this stuff, yeah, maybe it takes away pain, but what are the long-term side effects? It's just like the big thing that we had going on not too long ago, a few years ago, with pain medicine. They had all these pain management doctors. Do they still got some of them? They, are they, now I know they got pain management doctors that are legitimate that don't prescribe narcotics in any way. But this was back then, back then. Yeah, there's some pain management. Mom goes to a pain management doctor, but she doesn't get prescribed narcotics or nothing stronger than tramadol. But it's yeah. But what they do is, they had these pain management doctors that were charging $200 and $300 a visit and didn't take insurance. You had to pay cash. Now there were a few of them in Arkansas. Yeah, there were a few of them in Arkansas. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 Well, and it's and on those the pain pills that they were putting people on, this oxycodone and all this other stuff, that strong stuff, they were getting up there, and then they had the problem because all of a sudden the state of Arkansas just cut it off. Well, these people are now they're going through withdrawals because that's just like having heroin withdrawals because it's basically what it is. You know, so it's they created another mess on top of it. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. Whosoever lieth with a beast shall surely be put to death. Bestiality was practiced in the ancient world, and here God specifically commands against it. Okay? This is what we get in today's society, and it was also the same thing back then to a point. If the moral measure for sexual acts is if it feels good, do it, then there is no moral measure whatsoever. Okay? And culture will become increasingly depraved until this changes. And this is what's happening. This is the people of the world, and it's been going on for a while, but the people of the world, if it feels good, do it. No, if it feels good, it's God made sex for a man and a woman, and yes, it was made it to be pleasurable, so for the procreation of children. But with the beast, with an animal, there's some problems there. Okay. All right. He that sacrificeth unto any god, save unto the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. So in ancient Israel, as we know, it was strictly prohibited to sacrifice to pagan gods. Even though they broke this law quite a bit. It got broke quite often. And even though this law is a death penalty, it's supposed to be, they're supposed to be put to death because of it, the law was broken a lot, but the penalty was rarely applied. It was rarely enforced. One rare example of when it was applied to it was when Elijah executed the prophets of Baal in 1 Kings 18:40. Okay? This law was often broken, and the penalty was rarely applied. Okay? Verses 21. What? 18 to 20. Oh, okay. Yeah, there we go. Verse 21. Thou shalt neither vex a stranger, nor oppress him, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. Now, this is going to be a good one. A good measure of our moral character is found in how we treat a stranger. People often find that it's easy to treat their own flesh and blood well. All right? But God commands us to have concern for others as well, including the stranger. And what they're talking about strangers here, anybody know what they're talking about when he talks about strangers in this way? Okay. Primarily what they're talking about is immigrants. Okay? That's what they're talking about here, is immigrants. Because, he said, Israel was once strangers. They were immigrants to the land of Egypt. Right? And the enduring strife between ethnic and national groups shows how little humanity has really progressed. We haven't progressed that far in it. And it's fair to examine how accommodating we are to strangers around us. That's it. Israel's own experience of being strangers should have given them appropriate sympathy for the strangers in their midst. God's command that there be kindness and good treatment towards strangers does not mean that it is not good or fitting that the stranger receive permission to live in the community. Here's where we're getting the problem. Okay? And I know a lot of the pro-immigration people will quote this kind of thing, right? God said to do that. Yeah, okay, yes, God did say to do that. But the caveat, all right? He says, remember, you were strangers Israel were strangers in Egypt, okay? But the thing about it is, the people of Israel were strangers in Egypt, but at the express permission of Pharaoh. Pharaoh gave them permission to be there. They're rioting in Los Angeles, Chicago, I think New York, and some other places right now. They're burning, and don't get me on my political soapbox. The news is standing there going, "Oh, they're peaceful There were politicians on there going, "They're peaceful protests." One of them nobody's been shot, nobody's been killed. It's peaceful. So it's only a violent protest if somebody gets shot or killed. Okay, yeah. It's called insurrection if we do it, you know. But they're standing there. Well, it was just like it was. It was just like it was back in 2020 when they had the Summer of Love in Portland and all that stuff, and they have TV news people standing there and saying, "Oh, everything's fine. It's peaceful protest," while buildings are burning around them and people are looting things behind them. Yeah. But the thing is, if people are here in this country, if they're immigrants, they're here, and they're here legally, yes, we are supposed to be good for them. And we're not supposed to be mean or cruel to people who aren't here illegally, but we can't expect to keep them here, okay? What God is saying in this is that you were strangers once, legally strangers. You need to be kind to strangers that are among you, okay? That doesn't mean we got to be kind to people who rape and kill and murder and do all these other things, all right? All right, verses 22 to 24. Ye shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If thou afflict them in any wise, and they cry at all unto thee, I will surely hear their cry. And my wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. The widow and the fatherless child were the weakest and most vulnerable members of their society. And in an unrestrained survival of the fittest society, they would be the first ones to suffer. Okay? They would suffer abuse, and they would suffer destruction. So God here commands that at the very least, they were not to be afflicted. Okay? Specifically because of their special vulnerability. God commanded special care and concern for them, promising to protect them. Verse 25 to 27. If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as an usurer. Neither shalt thou lay upon him usury. If thou would all take thy neighbor's raiment for pledge, thou shalt deliver it unto him by that the sun goeth down. For that is his covering only, and his raiment for his skin, wherein he sleep. And it shall come to pass, when he crieth unto me, I will hear, for I am gracious. All right? So this is the law that they're using for lending, borrowing, and things like that. Interest was prohibited on loans made to the poor. I wish somebody would tell them at the car dealership. Okay? Because I would save a lot of money. But the taking of collateral had to be reasonable. The only prohibited the taking of interest on loans for the relief of the poor is the fact that one's garment could be used. Before they were allowing them to use the garment as collateral, but it was only under regulated circumstances. Okay? This shows that these were loans with repayment expected, and they were secured with collateral. It's just like buying a house, buying a car, buying anything on credit. Right? That whatever it is that you bought, that's the collateral that you're using. If you don't pay for it, they will come take it away from you. Simple as that. Okay? So they were not gifts, they were loans. Right? But God promised to hear the prayers of the poor man when he cried out to the Lord. And God's general sympathy for the poor is reflected in the fact that Jesus came from a poor family. Mary and Joseph weren't rich. When he was dedicated at the temple, just shortly after his birth, the sacrifice that they made was the sacrifice of a poor family, which was 2 birds. In Luke 2:24. Okay? All right, we're bringing it home. We may make it out of here on time. I was thinking we might get out of here early, but we're going to get out of here on time, I think. Exodus 22:28-31. Thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the ruler of thy people. Thou shalt not delay to offer the first of thy ripe fruits and of thy liquors. The firstborn of thy sons shalt thou give unto me. Likewise shalt thou do with thine oxen and with thy sheep. 7 days it shall be with his dam, and the 8th day thou shalt give it to me. And ye shall be holy men unto me, neither shall ye eat any flesh that is torn of beasts in the field. Ye shall cast it to the dogs. Okay. The most basic measure of holiness is in what we say. God cares how we talk about him. Okay. And God cares about how we talk in people who are in rightful authority over us. We may gripe and complain about the politicians and everything, but we're to give them the respect that they are due because they are our elected officials. They are our leaders. Okay? Another way to honor God is by giving God his due. When we're commanded to give something to God, Brother Gilmore who preached about this a while back and why so many people got mad. When we're commanded to give something to God, it's a sin not to give it to him. Okay? It's also a sin to delay giving it to him. According to Exodus 13:11 and 12, this command was to be obeyed when they came into the land of Canaan. All right? God's given the law, and it was supposed to be when they established their nation in the land of Canaan. Much of the Mosaic law didn't make any sense to the children of Israel while they were in the wilderness, and it was given to prepare them for life in Canaan. And had they obeyed and trusted God the way they should have, they were at this point in their journey only a little more than a year away from Canaan. But because of their unbelief and their disobedience, they were 40 years from Canaan now. But they didn't know that at the giving of the law. So God commanded them to give him the firstborn. This was done through redemption. The giving of money was to substitute for the son. In other words, you didn't sacrifice your firstborn child. You gave money instead. That was Exodus, or we'll see that in Exodus 34, 19, and 20. Money was also a substitute for the firstborn among the unclean animals, because the unclean animals couldn't be used as a sacrifice. But the firstborn among the clean animals, that was sacrificed to the Lord. And this law regarding the giving of the firstborn to God was important, because since the firstborn was regarded as the best, it was a demonstrated way to give the best to God. It reminded Israel that God regarded them as his firstborn. They were his favored people. And it reminded Israel that God spared their firstborn when he judged the firstborn of Egypt. Okay? So that was why they had to give the firstborn. All right. Now we've got two parts of the law. That completes two parts of the law. Next week we will be getting into part 3 of the law. Because as I told you last week, chapters 21 to 23 are the law that was given at Mount Sinai. Any questions, comments, concerns, amens, omes? Yeah. Elisha.
Thank you for joining us today. We pray you were blessed by the broadcast. If you have a prayer request or questions about Solid Rock Tabernacle, please visit our website at www.solidrocktabernacle.org. That's www.solidrocktabernacle.org. On behalf of the pastors and congregation here at Solid Rock Tabernacle, we pray you have a blessed week, and we invite you to join us in person or on one of our future broadcasts.